Hello, my name is Michael Salmony, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode where we talk to interesting people around fintech and digital payments and digital innovations. And today I'm really thrilled to have Marie with me, who we will be talking to about trust frameworks. Marie, can you explain a little bit what is a trust framework?
Yeah, absolutely. And pleasure to be here, Michael. Thanks for inviting me on. So a trust framework is the set of rules that govern data sharing in an ecosystem. So it basically literally creates trust between different parties, different entities. Can also be trust within a large organization which has data siloed in different business units. But essentially, what you're trying to do is create the rules of how you can access that data, who is allowed to do what with it, so roles and permissions, and also things like what purposes you can access that data for. And people are quite familiar with the idea of a trust framework, or some people are quite familiar with the idea of a trust framework in the sense of creating that playing field, that level playing field, where you can trust that the parties involved in it have the rights to appropriately access the data that they are requesting. But what goes beyond that is when you have technology that implements the rules. And that's been something that's been lacking in open banking in Europe, which is what FIDA in PSD3 is trying to build upon. That lack of a technical way of implementing trust framework rules means that you haven't technically had a surety that the people requesting your APIs have the rights, the appropriate licenses and permissions to do so.
That sounds really intriguing because some people would say there already is some sort of institutionalized trust and some technical means. You know, there are certificates and there are directories, and you know, how does what you're doing differ from what one already sees in open banking?
Yeah, okay. Well, I can give you a tiny history lesson if you like. The company I work for, Raidiam, they were involved in open banking in the UK at the very beginning. They quickly realized that in order to have trust between the data providers and the data receivers, in order to replace bilateral agreements, which are never applied consistently and prevent scale, you needed to have technical means of ensuring that everybody has those correct roles and permissions. So in the UK, which went further and quicker than Europe with open banking, we have a dynamic participant directory, and we have FAPI-grade security, which controls the relationships between the different parties. So rather than having bilateral agreements between everybody in the ecosystem, which is what we have in Europe, you have this single platform where all the banks and TPPs on board. And once on that platform, which you could view as a private API store, they have the ability to go and make the API calls with FAPI grade security. And having onboarded onto that platform, that replaces the need for bilateral agreements and reduces a huge amount of economic wastage of creating those agreements. Radium built that technology and delivered it for the UK, and then they moved on and repackaged it as a SaaS offering and used it in Brazil to implement open banking, which quickly became open finance in literally 6 months compared to the 6 years in the UK, because obviously the tough work had been done in terms of inventing it. But they quickly also realized in Brazil that in the directory, you need to have discoverability. And that's a key difference between the UK and Brazil. And it's also something that we don't have in Europe. So the directories in Europe are just static lists of participants. And the registers of the licenses are not machine readable and they're not real time. So you can find, and I know this happens a lot, a bank will get a call from a TPP who has got new permissions in a new territory or for a new payments, for example, and they may get refused because the registers aren't up to date. If you move to a dynamic participant directory, a discoverable one, you can search for the APIs you're wishing to consume by provider name, by product, by data type. So it really solves the whole complexity of access and enables people to smoothly get to what they want and also to then just concentrate on innovation. Brazil also put in place a very robust conformance program. So making sure that the APIs conform to the standards again reduces friction. And I know that's a big problem in the UK and also Europe. So it's an enabling technology. No data sits on the platform, no data goes through the platform. It's simply a means of ensuring everybody is appropriately behaving. The security is absolutely top notch, and you have the ability to find the APIs that you want. There's a PKI stack as well, which controls the transport and signing certificates. So it's super, super secure and super enabling. And an alternative version to that would be having an API hub. But an API hub, you are constrained by the APIs that the hub provider has chosen to publish. So they might not always have exactly what you're looking for or the latest of what you're looking for. And it's also a central point of failure. It could be a target for attack because of the volume of data that passes through that single point. So there are lots of advantages to trust frameworks. It is the accepted or trust framework technology is the accepted gold standard nowadays, where we're seeing new countries move forward with open finance, such as in the Middle East. There's been a big move there recently. It's with trust framework technology. So
That's
I'm obviously
really
an advocate because of Raidiam, but I do genuinely believe that this is enabled. And also, just on this point, Europe will need trust frameworks because of the way that it's structuring with FIDA. You become part of a or numerous data sharing schemes. Data sharing schemes are a trust framework, conceptual trust framework by any other means. And with the stated aim of these being interoperable, you are going to need to have a technical means of implementing the trust framework and that interoperability. The good news is that a standard for the interoperability already exists with OpenID Federation. And the technology is proven to be cross-sector, cross-border, interoperable. So the building blocks are all there. It's about now applying them. And we're seeing some banks actually take this step themselves, having trust framework technology in order to create an open ecosystem within their own enterprise in order to onboard third parties, partners, or simply to share the data more securely, going beyond keys and secrets to asymmetric security keys. All of these things create a much more robust and easy way of accessing data. And also, just one final point on this. Sorry, I
that's
could talk for hours on this thing. We've also already built payments. So with SPA or SPAA, I'm not familiar with it enough to know how it's pronounced, but that allows for
fun.
premium APIs. We've already got SPA. We've already got Trust Framework payments working with Australia. We run the Connect ID digital identity platform. We're building into our trust framework technology the ability for uh, banks or data providers to charge a micro payment for the premium APIs within the data sharing technology. So all of this is really starting to deliver on the promise of this open data economy that we've all been reading about so much and talking about so much in the last few
Mm.
years.
I mean, that is super impressive, Marie. I mean, there are loads of things that spring to mind. I mean, you're avoiding a sort of central place, like, for example, they have in Turkey, a sort of central API hub. You have real time, which is obviously a thing that many are missing, right? If somebody goes rogue, how do you revoke the certificate and the authentication in real time? There
Absolutely.
is so many lovely elements in there. Maybe you could just, because we only have a minute left, just say a word how that compares and contrasts to eIDAS, which some people would think is also a sort of trust framework that is emerging in Europe.
Yeah, so I think it's complementary. So eIDAS particularly the eID that is being introduced into every European country, in order for that to provide European citizens with the same rights and access to services in different countries, you need to have interoperability between the, the eID programs in the different countries. And for that, you need a trust framework. So I think it's complementary. It's not, the technology is not a rip and replace for anything that anybody has already. It's simply an enabling technology that's completely traceable, transparent, and agnostic to whatever other services and provisions you put into it. But it
Mm.
just enables the absolute certainty of who is in the ecosystem, what are they allowed to do, what can they access, for what purpose, for how long, and then provides the secure signposting and method of receiving data. So
That's
it bolts
really
onto
amazing,
any other
Marie.
scheme.
Yeah. I'm afraid our time has come to an end, but I think you made an extremely good case. I mean, I and many others have been saying we need something for years, right? We've been building these digital financial services without a proper identity and trust fundament. And that's why a number of problems have emerged. And really glad to see what you're doing. And obviously, your success in Brazil and Middle East and Australia and everything shows that you are completely solving a real problem that's needed. So thank you very much, Marie. This has been super enlightening. Also, thank you for comparing a little bit with the other developments and how that connects. That's super helpful to everybody. And thank you to all of you who are following this channel. I hope you enjoyed that, also found it insightful. And please check out our other episodes, which are also, I hope, interesting around open banking and digital finance. So thank you for watching. And thank you, Marie, for your being so interesting.
Thank you.